Welcome to another Rolled in Reacts episode. The owner of this car had started getting a clunk when going over bumps, so he just fixed it himself using some footballs. And this customer complained about his cab not really getting warm in the winter. Customer states, "Side mirror is like my wife's mood, you never know where it's going." This car came in after the owner suddenly lost all power on the highway 5 days after their friend had tuned the engine for them in his mom's garage. And this customer came in saying that his Mercedes has literally started limping. The owner of this car had fixed a broken exhaust, all by themselves using some silicone, but had to come in because the fix wasn't fixing. And this customer came in with quite the oil leak and apparently signed the repair order as Duct Tape Jesus. This car came in because it ran rough after the customer had been in 10 days prior to get a new timing belt installed, but had declined getting new tensioners because they were apparently in pretty okay condition. Customer states, "My car's got the crabs, please advise." And this car rolled in after the owner had tried replacing the ball joints on it by himself. This Ford SUV came in because the customer complained about lots of road noise when driving on the highway. The owner of this Kia came in because it wouldn't start, and this is what the mechanic found. And in case you ever wonder what the heck Venom oil really is, here you go. This pickup truck rolled in because the owner had trouble starting it even after he tried tapping the battery connectors gently. This customer had done some wiring work by himself, but it didn't go so well. Customer states, "My antenna needs a blue pill." And this car was in for an oil change when the mechanic noticed the state of the undercarriage and that the customer had installed their very own underglow kit. This van rolled in for a safety inspection, and this is what the mechanics found. And this customer came in saying they had too much blinker fluid. Customer came in complaining about a ticking sound coming from the engine and also said that he does all regular maintenance on the car himself. This car rolled in for an inspection after the owner had installed some Lambo doors and a home-built carbon fiber body kit. This mobile mechanic was called in to come help a customer who said they'd been driving on the highway when suddenly feeling the car slipping away from them. And this car had said its very last knock-knock joke. Customer states, "Accidentally drove over a sign because it said op on it." The owner of this car came in saying that his wife likes to hit things fast, including curbs. This Lexus RX rolled in for its first oil change since 2009. Apparently, the customer thought that the car ran fine, and so she didn't bother with any maintenance other than filling it up with gas and washer fluid. This car was in because the manual parking brake had started to identify as an automatic. And this customer's favorite movie villain is the Joker. This car came in because it had quite the leak. The owner of this car came in because they had a terrible clunking sound and said that it feels like driving a hovercraft after they had done some frame repair at another shop a few months ago. This customer's Jeep came in because it has a noise from the front drivetrain and the traction control light is always on, after the customer had installed a lift kit on it together with a friend the weekend prior. And these mechanics had found one of the many hiding places that 10 mils have. This Dodge Charger was in for some differential work after the customer had done a few donuts at the local mall parking lot. Customerstates borrowed the car to a friend who needed to tow something up a steep hill. We're not friends anymore. The owner of this car came in complaining about a humming noise and vibrating seats when driving on the highway. And this car came in because the wheels kept falling off after the customer had installed the wrong lug nuts. Customer came in saying that they hit a hole in the road and heard a scraping sound and wanted the mechanic to have a look underneath. The owner of this Genesis G70 had it in for an oil change at a quick lube shop, but they had apparently improvised a bit when reinstalling the underplate, and the customer now had a rattling noise at idle. This customer was in because he said he had a clunking noise when turning, and this is what the steering rack looked like. This car was in because the customer said it, quote, handled like a 89-year-old lady trying to do a pole dance. The owner of this car came in because one of their tires kept deflating after they had a flat fixed not too long ago at a different shop. And this customer was in because they needed a new fuse box, but the mechanic also noticed this. This car came in because the owner thought it was time to get some new winter tires. Customer states, I feel every inch of every bump and hole I drive over. Please advise. And this car was in for an oil and filter change, but the customer first had to explain to the mechanic how he would actually start it, as it had a special starting mechanism. This customer's SUV was in because it wouldn't move forwards or backwards anymore, but the customer stated that regular maintenance has been performed yearly. Customer came in complaining about their newly installed radio changing channels on its own and wanted it looked at. And this is what happens when you keep hitting those curbs faster than normal speeds. The owner of this car came in because his braking power still hadn't improved much, even after he replaced brake calipers and pads by himself. Apparently, he had forgotten to install new discs. Nice. This customer's Tundra was in because it had started to pull to one side when driving on the freeway. And this customer had installed an extra backup light, all by himself. This is what happens when you pour stuff into the engine that should actually go into your coolant system. Ah, Mr. Sparkly, we meet again. Customer states, hit what seemed to be a stick horse on my way to work, but damn thing must have been made of titanium. This Chrysler minivan came in because the owner said that it had started to vibrate a lot at higher speeds. Upon inspection, the mechanic discovered that someone had fixed the rear axle in a pretty interesting way. This customer came in with their motorbike saying it was impossible to get it running after they had borrowed it to a friend over the weekend. Turns out that the clutch was totally destroyed. Customer came in with their old Volvo saying it had gotten really hard to get in gear, and this is what the mechanics found. This Ford F-150 rolled in because the radio and cabin fan would randomly turn themselves on after the customer had done some wiring work under the hood a couple of weeks ago. And even though we're sometimes stuck in the garage all day, God still finds a way to shine His light on us. This car came in because the owner complained about a steering wheel vibration after they had balanced their wheels at a different shop a week prior. Customer states, car jerks a lot and almost stalls whenever I try to start in the middle of a hill. Cozy. Gotta love that Wawa, wet-ass water pump. This customer's vehicle was in because it had started to lean heavily to one side after the customer hit a speed bump doing 50 miles per hour. And you know, electrical tape is great for many things. Fixing brake lines, however, is not one of them. The owner of this car had borrowed it to his grandson who went camping over the weekend, but when he got it back it just wouldn't start. Customer states his pickup leaks washer fluid. Nothing has been done to the vehicle other than the customer installing some rock lights a few days ago. And this car came in with quite the transmission leak after the customer had tried using the transmission as a jacking point to do some work on the subframe. This vehicle came in because the customer kept finding holes everywhere in the interior and couldn't figure out what was causing it. Turns out that the vehicle had a second owner with sharp teeth and a long tail, living in the trunk. Customer came in saying, "My wipers act like two younger siblings. Please advise." Why have only one when you can have two? The owner of this Lincoln came in after he had tried installing a new fuel pump by himself, but had just caused a mess and had to come in to get some proper help. "There's your problem, sir." This customer came in saying that he hit what looked like a giant pack of Oreos while on his way to work. This car came in because the transmission had all but given up after the customer had another shop do some work on the washer fluid tank for them about a year ago. Turns out that the other shop had connected the washer fluid tank hose to a transmission vent, and every time they washed off their windshield, washer fluid was pushed everywhere but on the windshield. Choo choo! And this customer came in with their Seat for an oil change, but the mechanics flat out refused to work on it because of the awful smell coming from the interior. Customer states, rattling sound coming from the engine. This customer came in saying that their turbo sounds like and wanted it checked out. The owner of this Lincoln MKX came in because they had a steering issue after they had done some tweaking of the tie rod ends to get a better connection with the road when driving. This Chevy Silverado came in because the customer said that the cab feels loose when driving on the highway, and this is how the cab mounting bolts looked like when the mechanic had it on the lift. This car was in because the rear brakes were stuck after the customer had it sit on their driveway for a few years with the parking brake engaged. Peekaboo! The owner of this truck came in for one new ball joint, but he ended up needing two. Customer states, gas store thinks it's a flying squirrel. And this car came in on a tow truck after the customer hit a sinkhole that had suddenly formed in front of them while driving to the grocery store. This customer came in with their Jeep complaining about a noise when driving, and this is what the mechanics found. And this Volkswagen came in because the owner had started hearing a strange sound when driving after he had replaced the transmission together with his father. This Chevy Silverado 1500 HD rolled in because the customer said it accelerated like an older gentleman trying to cross the street with a walker on a Sunday afternoon. Turned out to be a pretty crooked tailpipe. This customer was in for an oil change but never mentioned anything about the state of the tires. And this customer was in with her Honda because it was really difficult to get into gear, and this is what the clutch looked like. Customer states, car is really hard to stop, even though I just installed new brakes. The owner of this car came in after they had tried to fix a clunk sound by themselves, but it wasn't super successful. And when your oil changes start looking like they're sponsored by Starbucks, best believe you're overdue for maintenance. This car came in because the customer had tried changing his own brake pads, but had accidentally put the backing plates on so they were rubbing against the discs, which caused quite the problem. And if you ever wondered how some of the cars on here ever get to the shop in the first place, here's how. This Chevy owner came in saying that it had gotten really hard to drive in a straight line on the highway after another shop had done some work on the steering linkage. Customer states, I know somebody who can fix it for less. The owner of this car came in saying that his car gets way too excited when he fills it up. This BMW X3 came in after the owner apparently crashed into and then drove over a guardrail while on his way to pick up his girlfriend at the airport. And this vehicle came in because it just wouldn't start after the customer had done an oil change by himself, but had put way too much oil in it. This customer was in because they had a rattling sound coming from underneath the car. And this car was in for some new seats after it had apparently been sitting in a goat barn for a few months, when a couple of goats had gotten into the car and snacked on the interior. Customer came in saying that they were driving home from work when they suddenly heard a loud metallic sound and the car just stopped. Apparently, they had recently let a friend do an oil change for them, but they had apparently forgot to refill the engine with new oil afterwards. And the owner of this car had installed sporty air suspension by himself, but still complained about clunking sounds when driving. Customer states, I think something's leaking. Can you have a look? This customer came in with their SUV because they had some starting issues after they parked it on a riverbank during low tide while they were out hiking for a few days. Once they came back from the hiking trip, they found half the car to be submerged in water. This customer came in complaining about a leak. Looks great. And this car rolled in because the customer had some issues with the brakes after one of their relatives had helped them refurbish some brake lines. When your car looks more like a Swiss cheese than a car, it's probably time for a new one. Customer came in saying that something just flew by their car as they were driving on the highway. Turned out to be the speed limit sign. And the owner of this car is actually a giant rodent disguised as a human being. This guy had been out with his all-wheel drive car on a little hiking trip but got stuck in a deep mud puddle and had to come into the shop on a tow truck because one of the diffs had seized. This customer was in because they needed quite a lot of brake work. This truck came in because the owner had tried converting it from 4-wheel drive to 2-wheel drive, but now had a steering wheel vibration at all speeds and really worn out tires. Customer states, tried lowering the car by himself, but it went a bit so-and-so. The owner of this truck was on his way to pick up his wife from Zumba class when one of the front wheels just drove right past him on the highway. Turned out that the customer had another shop install ball joints in fairly new condition about 7 days prior. Customer said that they apparently hit a curbside faster than intended because it was a foggy morning and they didn't see it. When the pre-purchase inspection works as it should. This customer rolled in because their car had turned into a steam train after they had topped up their coolant with water while on a long road trip across the country. The mechanic found that the car will most likely need an engine replacement. And this customer had replaced his own head gasket, but had to come in because he now had quite the blow-by and the engine ran pretty hot. This Buick Century rolled in because the customer suspected the water pump to be broken, but apparently someone had just installed the belts in the wrong way, which had then bypassed the water pump completely. Customer states, "Help! My car keeps shaking hands with the milkman." And this customer had tried to install a rear hitch all by himself. Customer states, starting issues, recently had it in for a new valve cover gasket at another shop. The owner of this Hyundai Sonata came in after a cigarette butt had lit a piece of a napkin on fire and almost burnt the whole car out. The customer had apparently smoked right before spending an entire afternoon at IKEA with his wife. This Kia owner rolled in because they had let their friend help them install a tow hitch, but they had apparently saved on bolts and only used one bolt instead of two to secure the hitch mount. Customer came in complaining about a wobbly steering wheel and that the brakes work when they feel like it. And the owner of this car just wanted a new set of tires. This car came in because the owner said he had a clunk and dunk sound when driving after he had installed sportier suspension together with his friends a few months ago. The owner of this Honda came in because he said that he finally wants it fully reconditioned. The mechanic said that he wasn't sure if that was even possible at this point. This customer had changed his own wheel bearings, rotors, and calipers, but only got about 3 blocks down the street when this happened. And this almost brand new SUV came in because it already had a broken suspension link after the customer had just picked it up from the dealership 5 days prior. This customer's Mercedes 264 engine was in because it had quite the misfire and ran rough at all speeds. This is a known issue on these engines and it often requires a full cylinder head replacement. And this guy was working on this engine in this pretty small shed and went to crank it, but didn't notice that his working light had fallen into the engine bay, which ended up causing quite the mess. Customerstates asked for a wheel alignment and also to remove the unidentified object hanging from his tow hitch. And this car had quite the limping problem. The owner of this car rolled in because they said that it shifted really poorly. Once the mechanic opened up the transmission, he found all this plastic debris floating around in there. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get that premium garage support. Extra dark chocolate drip, anyone? This car was in because the customer said that it feels like massaging a big marshmallow pillow with his foot when braking. The mechanic discovered that someone had installed drum brakes on the right side and disc brakes on the left. Customer states, car doesn't want to start, has tried everything under the sun. Can you help this customer figure out what the problem might be? And this customer came in saying that their truck sounds like an excited seal about to jump into icy water. And this mechanic caught a potential customer in the wild. Customer came in saying that he hears a weird noise when the car is idling, but couldn't quite pinpoint where it was coming from. The owner of this Harley Davidson trike complained about the clutch feeling strange and wanted it looked at. And this 2024 pickup only has 3,000 miles on it, but has already managed to overheat a couple of times. The owner of this BMW M4 had only bought it 6 months ago, but said that it already feels unstable and wobbly when driving at higher speeds, for some unknown reason. Customer states, flux capacitor and time circuit GPS system needs maintenance. This customer came in because they've started hearing a knocking sound, and it apparently also gets worse every time they go to top off the washer fluid. Customer came in saying, the damn kid next door thinks he's Tiger Woods, always has to practice whenever I'm working on the car. Customer states, doesn't think the car finds her attractive anymore. The owner of this car had just bought it at an auction for $8,100 and was apparently told it only needed a new transmission, but this is how it looked like underneath. This Ford van was just in for an oil change when the mechanic noticed that it actually was quite a piece of art. When asked about it, the customer said that he's done all the work on it himself, together with his cousin, and that he's also learned everything he knows from his uncle, Big Bob Towhead. Yummy. And this car came in with the milkshake of milkshakes. The owner of this truck had just renovated his engine together with his best friend, but hadn't installed one of the connecting rods properly, which led to some major engine damage. And this customer came in with a clunking sound after he had done some suspension work on his car. Turns out that he had forgotten to reinstall the bolts on the strut tower. This car came in because the owner has had a scraping sound that gets louder and louder while accelerating, ever since they were on a yard sale a few days ago. Customer states, did the last oil change by himself not too long ago. And the owner of this car said that it's really easy to unlock. But locking, however, is a different story. This 2014 Chevy Impala came in on a tow truck because it wouldn't start, after the customer had it in for some electrical work at a different shop just 7 days ago. This customer came in saying that she had let her father-in-law change the head gasket not too long ago to save some money, but that it hadn't gone entirely to plan and that the car now makes a strange sound when driving longer distances. The owner of this Ford SUV came in saying that they have a strange intermittent scraping sound after they had towed a trailer full of corn feed back to their farm. Must have been one hell of a jam-packed trailer of corn feed. This car comes with foldable mirrors, but not exactly the kind you'd expect. And this truck came in with a sway bar that really lives up to its name. This customer came in complaining about a clunking sound after he had been driving through a small village on an unmarked road. Customer states, had a flat but fixed it himself, wants to know roughly how many more miles he could drive before needing to fix it again. And this customer had installed some new brake calipers using a YouTube tutorial, but hadn't quite watched to the end and had to come in because he needed some help from the pros. Customer came in saying that his cabin fan has started sounding like his wife before she's had her first cup of coffee for the day. The owner of this car said that he had eaten something bad and suddenly had to drop the kids off at the pool real bad, so he pulled into a parking spot with a pretty high curb, going a bit too fast. Luckily, he made it on time, but now needed a new set of front rims. And this is eventually what happens when you don't slow down before them speed bumps. Customer states, car has started sounding like the intro to an 80s rock song. If you know which one it is, drop it in the comments down below. This customer rolled in saying that the interior lights had just stopped working all of a sudden. And this car seems to have just the right amount of fiber in its diet. This car came in because the owner said somebody had glued the washer fluid cap shut because it was nearly impossible to open. Uh-oh. This customer was told they needed a new wheel bearing very soon, but had declined all repairs, and this is what happened as they were driving away from the shop. The owner of this truck came in saying that his window is screaming for some WD-40. And this car came in with a pretty big leak. Customer came in complaining about a weird sound when shifting after another shop recently flushed out the transmission, but by the looks of it had forgotten something quite important. As good as new. The owner of this car rolled in saying that he can't have automatic braking turned on because the car keeps braking at random all the time and he thought it might be a software issue. Customer states, slight steering wheel vibration at highway speeds. And this customer rolled in with their car looking like this after they had borrowed it to their youngest son, who had just gotten his license 3 weeks prior. Tell me you're a dog owner without telling me you're a dog owner. This car came in on a tow truck after the customer claimed to have hit a giant Snickers bar while on his way to pick up his kids from school. I guess you're really not you when you're hungry after all. The owner of this BMW was in for a new servo pump, but forgot to mention to the mechanics that he also installed a lowering kit on it by himself the week before. This car makes its very own truffle chocolate. And this car was in because the owner had a loud sound coming from the wheels after they had let another shop do some suspension work on it. This customer came in for an alignment when the mechanic discovered it needed a bit more work than only that. Customer declined all repairs and said he'll take it to another shop that actually listens. And this customer hit the kind of jackpot you don't want to hit. This car was in after the owner complained about a small steering wheel vibration. And when Shrek piss starts coming out of your car, you're probably overdue for maintenance. Customer came in very surprised saying that his ABS lights suddenly came on, even though he recently renovated his brakes. I guess the definition of recently varies from person to person. Customer states, grandson tried installing new speakers in his car, but door is now really hard to open. And these mechanics were just about to work on this car's suspension when they made a shocking discovery. This customer came in after they hit a pothole that looked smaller than what it really was. And the owner of this car came in saying that his dashboard has started to reminisce on its past life as disco lights. When you hit the brakes so hard, they actually break. This car was just in for a new thermostat when the mechanics caught something before it turned into a really expensive problem for the customer. Customer states, nephew installed a new battery and fuse box, but car has weird glitches ever since. And these ventilated rotors were a bit too ventilated. Customer came in complaining about their air vents sounding like a Spitfire airplane. This car apparently came with a built-in inspection window. And this customer rolled in with their Pontiac saying the steering wheel sits a bit too low. Yummy. The owner of this car came in saying that his cabin fan has started sounding like Tarzan screaming for help. Looks great. And this customer had another shop do a tire rotation for them, but it went a bit so-and-so. Customer states, truck's mirrors do more use to other drivers than to me. Please advise. And this car came in after the owner had done some work on their brake calipers but had tightened them with tie wraps instead of the proper caliper bolts. And the owner of this car came in with one of the most unique oil leaks the mechanics had ever seen. This heavy-duty pickup rolled in after the customer said they heard a loud metallic noise and lost all power while they were doing 100 miles an hour on the freeway. Turns out that the customer had been to the shop a few weeks prior because of an issue with the all-wheel drive, but had decided to wait for their next paycheck before fixing it. And this customer had filled their car with the wrong kind of ethanol. This bike engine was in because the owner wanted to know if it was worth repairing or not. Let us know what you think in the comments below. The owner of this car rolled in because they had a loud squeaking sound when braking after their uncle had installed some new brake pads for them for cheap. The mechanic noticed that they had gotten the wrong brake pads, but instead of getting new ones, they just improvised a bit. Customer states, turning radius on my new Mercedes is too tight. And if you work a lot on cars, you know that 10 mils have a tendency to fall into black holes and show up again in random, unexpected places, such as behind a wheel well liner. The owner of this Volvo 740 came in saying that it's gotten harder and harder to shift lately and that he wanted it looked at. Customerstates thinks there's a gnome smoking Winstons behind one of his mirrors. And this car had some trouble keeping all the gas in. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and until next time.